welcome to another unboxing video from theplayersaid.com. Today we're taking a look at a brand new game from Compass Games, and this is Interceptor Ace by Gregory Smith. This is one of his solitaire games. It's a follow-up to Night Fighter Ace. I want to just take a second, big shout out to Greg Smith for providing this copy for us. If you don't know Greg Smith or you haven't played any of his games, you're missing out. Where have you been? His games are fun, solitaire games. He puts a lot of effort into the design to try and boil down a lot of complexity into really clever and concise systems. His games are really enjoyable, usually very portable as well. You can kind of play them anywhere, and he's just a really good and generous dude. So, let's take a look at this title and see what we get inside the box. The first thing you'll see is we have a deck of cards, and we'll get here in a second. We'll look at those. The game comes with two D6s, a D10, and a D12. D12's new in this one. Haven't played any of his games that use one of those yet. Or a D20. Did I say a D12? A D20. We have a couple of, well, this is the Interceptor Ace Sortie log sheet. And this is a huge double-sided pad. So the pad goes from March 1943 all the way on the other side of each pad to February 1944. So this is daylight bombing raids. You fly as different 109s, 110s, Focke-Wulfs, trying to intercept, obviously Interceptor Ace, shoot down B-17s, Liberators, things like that. They're doing daylight bombing raids over Nazi-occupied Europe. So the sortie chart is something you'll be familiar with from Night Fighter Ace, or even going back to the submarine games like Silent Victory or the Hunters. Very similar concepts to those. They give you the whole pad, and this is huge, which is nice. You don't have to do any photocopying on those, at least not for a while. We do have, let's see, the official errata as of November 2018. So the full sheet of errata, just clarifications and different bits and pieces. And then we have the rules of play. And this is a very Compass rules of play. It's a matte rulebook, and it is at best. Designer notes, really optional rules on the back. You look at 19, 20 pages of rules, which look to be decently well organized, and at least diagrams of all the components that it's referring to, and you start just getting into all the explanations. Not a ton of diagrams in this, because so much of it is solitaire. A lot of it is explaining modifiers and things that you roll through on the charts, so diagrams of charts would not be all that helpful. We have here, this is something very new on this. This is the position chart. And if you look here, this almost reminds you of things like Queen of the Skies or Target for Today. On this one, it's your approach vector. You're doing the attacking against the various different bombers. And depending on where you're attacking from, there's a modifier chart to your damage draw. And your damage is done by these cards, which again, we'll get to here in a second. This is a large display, just kind of a holding box and a sequence of play, and where you're based at and where you're going to start your missions from. Frankly, this is kind of optional. I've used these kind of things with Night Fighter Ace. There's a place for these elsewhere. All of these modifiers and stuff are found elsewhere. You can just keep it as a side. You don't have to have all this if you're kind of limited for space. And then we have all of the planes, all of the aircraft cards. And what I mean by that is, for example, here's all the bases that you could be based at. Well, that's a significant portion of what this part of this card is. You don't need a marked out space, you just put the cards wherever you want. Things like that. So this is superfluous. It's nice to have if you want to kind of have it all out and have a cool display and it looks pretty, but you don't necessarily need it. If you want to keep it compact, just this, and there's basically one other card that you would have out and would need. So this is 109G, and what you're looking at here is you're going to start on these bases and then you can fly. Basically, this is your range that you can fly before you have to kind of hoppity skip over and you run out of fuel. Now, looking for some of these larger, for example, his especially F410A, they can go much further. They got much larger fuel tanks. They can go these extra distances. And what I like about this is an abstraction. There's your fuck wolf. It's an abstraction of fuel consumption. So if you're based out of Bremen and you're, if the 8th Air Force are bombing Frankfurt, basically you take off and then you skip over to here, and only once you're in this box do you get to start kind of rolling for encounters and try to shoot them down. Well, that means these are blank. You only get one turn to try and do all of your combats. If you're in Bremen and they're attacking Bremen, you've got 1, 2, 3 turns to kind of find stuff, kill stuff, do more damage. And that's because to get from Bremen to Frankfurt, to actually intercept them, you use up almost all of your fuel before you'd have to turn around and land or whatnot. So this is an abstraction of, instead of having to track fuel points with counters and things like that, which can get very arduous, it's a really clean way of doing that. Really like this as well. You've got all of your damage systems that you can track, your forward cannons and ammunition, things like that. And these are all double-sided. So this is a 109G1, this is a 109G1R2, and there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and these are all double-sided. So there's 28 different aircraft that you can fly. Now, some of them are very similar in style. So these are very similar, right, in their fuel distances, all the systems that they have. The main difference is that this guy's got 6 extra forward cannons on here, for example. On the back, it's very similar aspects here. The difference is on this one, I don't know if it's just historicity on this one. These look very, very similar. MG17, 3, I don't know. Yeah, these might be identical. But it's just, if you're into the nitty-gritty of this, it's which one do you want, which Air Force you assigned to. You can look up the OOBs of what you would actually be flying. But there's a billion of these, and then you start getting into some... once you get up in your prestige levels, you can start flying these 110s, which have huge range, huge amounts of cannons on them, and they deal a ton more damage, things like that. They might be slower, less maneuverable, so fighter combat might be much harder for you, but everything's got its kind of positives and negatives. And here we have the dress-up doll. Again, this is fairly optional. You could note all of this down on a piece of paper if you needed to. But when you win awards and medals, you actually pin them on here, so to speak. As you level up your skills, you get little counters for them. Your crew, they level up as well. And you can play as a historical optional ace that you would just kind of put here, and you're trying to better or do as good as their historical outcomes. Again, this is kind of all optional. You can just have a little piece of note paper and keep that all on there if you didn't want to have extra sheets of counters kicking around. This is the bomber target chart. So you've got B-17s and B-24s, and these ones, basically when you do damage, you'll put damage counters going downwards. So if this is the starboard wing, you do damage, damage, damage. This last one, the wing falls off and the plane falls out of the sky, basically. Same thing over here for the B-24. This is your kind of attack formation, what range you're at, things like that as well. This is your fighter target chart. So you've got P-38s, P-47s, P-51s, and then Spitfire Mark 9s. These obviously have far fewer hit points. You start doing this, fuel tank's going to explode, control surfaces are going to start falling off and being destroyed because they're much smaller. There's literally less on them to take damage. One cannon hit's going to, do a lot more damage than it is to a huge B-17, for example. We do have an initiative chart on there, and the back does have random events and other different bits and pieces that you would do before or after you get to these. So you don't have a bunch of markers here and then you need to flip it over. These are totally different timings. This is your raid chart. This is where you're going to roll, you know, where the raids are coming, and you sortie to go and intercept them. So this is your all the different months of the campaign. And then this is your targets. When you roll, this is what you find. Do you find B-17s, B-24s? Are there any fighters? Yes or no, what the fighters are. There's a lot more fighters here. Late war, they were sending them naked. Early war and 8th Air Force took a lot of heavy losses, as well as Bomber Command. These are some of your standard charts you'd expect from this kind of game. Again, if you played Hunters, things like that. Sequence of play, B1 interception, B2 attack deck results, group damage, skills. So here's your sequence of play. Again, we go back to that bifold that had all that pretty artwork on it. It's entirely unnecessary if you choose to not use it. It's a great optional to have if you want to have it all set up, but you can keep this in a small compact space to actually play with at your desk or like in a tight space or on the go. Aircraft damage listings. This is what happens when your systems get damaged. A lot of it's, well, it's all bad. And this is available replacement aircraft as well. Tells you what's available probably if you get shot down or if things get destroyed. Hey, this is what you get assigned to, kind of a thing. And the last thing we have here is the single counter sheet, and this is white core. So we have here, these are all your aircraft that you'll be flying. You'll only have one of those out. These are the enemy fighters here and markers that you'll use on those little tracks and boards. Damage markers, ammo markers, just some counters. These are all the awards that you can and can't win. Skills you can upgrade, and then there's a whole bunch of markings here for where you're based, which squadron you're part of, and which zone you're based out of. So in Holland, for example, there's 4 squadrons, and there's 4 bases in Holland you can be based out of. This is purely just for flavor more than anything else. Outside of the zones, these don't really affect anything. There might be a couple where you get reassigned, where it might skip a week or two, where you move from one base to another, but the different squadrons in a zone are just for historical value and some good storytelling and flavor. So that's all you get in this, apart from this deck, which we'll talk about real quick. If I can get it open, that is. The decks are, this is a really neat concept that was first started in, he says, that was first started in Night Fighter Ace. Normally, with all of the sub-games, all the damage will be done on dice rolls. And on this one, I guess on the air ones, they've chosen to go with, it's effectively a damage deck. We'll get these ones out of the way. These are ace cards. So our damage deck, it's got this kind of red outline on them. We do have some ace cards, which we'll talk about here in a second. But basically, what you do is you choose which of your cannons you're going to fire, which of your weapon systems, and then you would draw a card. And you draw a card, and if you've got kind of 12 points worth of guns that in cannons you're shooting, you would do GP, which is group damage. You would look on the group damage chart, it would say, this is what happens, bang, and you do all that damage. If you only have 8 cannons firing, you do 5 points of damage. And then you would roll that many points on the damage table. So this tells you how many hits you do. If you can have a level 24 points of firepower, you're going to get DE destroyed. How do you get to 24? Well, have lots of guns on an upgraded plane, and you get modifiers. So if you're attacking from the weak spot, you're going to do more hits. It increases your firepower, basically. Some of these are fairly harsh. Some of them are really good. This also determines defensive fire, and then evasives, avoid all damage. So there's a few other different things that you'll pick a card to do. So this firepower, for example, not nearly as good. 2, 3, 4, 5, or group damage. This is really powerful. 4, 5, group, DE. These are group damage, and DE results are usually very, very, very good. So you're trying to look for those. It gives you some, if you're in fighter combat, you do scissors, you improve 2 positions, wingman, you improve 1 position, and that's kind of it's your, down in flames type of advantage, disadvantage, getting more hits doing those things. this is a very, very powerful card. No defensive fire, and you totally wiped him out of the sky on almost every result here. So the damage deck's really fun. It can be a cruel mistress at times, but I enjoy playing with it. It's just different, and it's less dice rolling. It's just a different kind of random, basically. The last thing of these ace cards is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it tells you kind of at the top what planes they were flying. But here it's basically, you get some starting abilities, and then it tells you this guy had 101 kills. And it tells you kind of born and dies, or he lived up through the war. And you're trying to basically match or improve that. The abilities are going to help you do that kind of stuff. But that's just, it's kind of playing against the system, against which to measure yourself more than anything. Just some cool historics, and I know Greg spends a lot of time researching these kind of people and putting them into game. That's a big thing that he enjoys doing. So, all in all, I am very excited to play this game. I have played many of Greg's designs, and I particularly love Night Fighter Ace because you are so incredibly fragile. This looks like it to be much the same, and Grant's already had a crack with this game, and he said it's it's unlike Night Fighter Ace in that you find something every single time in this. You are constantly fighting everything, so I hope to have a very action-packed experience, and I have high expectations for this one. So appreciate you guys tuning in. You'll see a review from this from us coming fairly soon, as we'll both have played it and we'll sit down and let you know how it is. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.